One of the most despicable individuals in the Trump regime was just torched under cross-examination under oath before the United States Senate. Interestingly, it was actually a Republican senator who led some of that torching of this Trump regime official. The regime official I speak of is Russ Vought. He's the director of the Office of Management and Budget and one of the authors of Project 2025. I want to show you what went down moments ago as Republican Senator Tillis cross-examined Russ Vought. Watch for yourself. Let's play this clip.
Anywhere else, but just give me the best example of what you thought was an exquisite realization of value that came through cuts that worked their way through the DOJ office.
Well, I do believe that the reductions in force as a tool.
Which specific one?
In general.
Yeah, but I want to get specifics. You and I have different backgrounds. Mine was in enterprise implementation. I did this for a living. And so I don't want a word salad answer.
Well, it's not word salad, Senator. CFPB, I'm trying to do a reduction in force.
But I'm just asking you across the board. Give me one best, because here's what I'm asking for. The DOJ office has been quiesced, okay? But there were a lot of claims of billions and billions of dollars in savings. I simply want to know where you booked them and where I can see it.
I didn't run DOJ, Senator.
You are OMB, right?
I am, but I am not DOJ.
You do track to me, and when I worked in business and we had to implement efficiency, we got engaged to come in, do activity-based accounting, whatever was necessary to identify the efficiencies. Then we go to the CEOs and say, part of this is going to be a reduction in force. We're going to do this in a methodical manner. The number one thing we want to do is absolutely have a reduction in force that looks at our best and brightest, that 18 to 25% of the organization, and make damn sure that they don't get a "you're fired" notice. And then we would send out a reduction in force and an efficiencies program that does people, technology, and infrastructure. Give me an example of where that was done over the year that DOJ was in place.
Well, I think the extent to which we
because
shut down
then, let me
USA
back up. The reason I'm targeting you is because I look at you as the guy who books the savings. After we work, let's say we work with whatever department it is, then we got the savings, we come to you and we say, Mr. Vought, this is no longer going to be a part of our expense run rate. You can actually tell the administration that we can decrement that cost because we've cut the savings. Give me the best example of where DOJ has done that.
Well, I have been saying in terms of...
No, because give me the best example of where a DOJ initiative,
Senator,
once they completed the work, came to you and said, Mr. Vought, you should be aware that our baseline run rate for expenses have gone down. Give me one example.
We have an appropriations process, Senator.
I'm sorry?
There is an appropriations process. We have put forward a budget that's $160 billion in DOJ savings.
I've heard a lot of people, including you, talk about the DOJ savings. I've worked in the business world. My understanding is the last time you worked in the business world was at B. Dalton Books when you were putting yourself through law school. Good on you. But you don't have this experience, and a lot of people that were involved in this do not have this experience. I love the idea of DOJ. But what I don't love is the idea of DOJ shit that we're picking up because people did it wrong. I spell it with a dollar sign, by the way, Mr. Chair.
Next, I want to show you the cross-examination of Russ Vought, this despicable creature, by Democratic Senator Tina Smith. Here, let's play this clip.
Example I want to ask you about. I'd like your response to this. So top researchers in Minnesota recently made a breakthrough in detecting and treating cancer in kids with a National Cancer Institute grant. And what the study did is it looked at what makes African American children more likely to die from blood and bone cancer. So it seems to me, according to your proposed rule, this kind of research wouldn't be allowed. You wouldn't fund it because you believe that studying why American children with African ancestry get cancer and would die from it would conflict with your anti-DEI rules. So is it true that that's how you see this rule being imposed here?
How our DEI policies, of which we are against DEI policies, we have intended to get rid of DEI policies wherever we possibly can.
So what impact would it have?
How that would impact with that particular grant would be a decision for a political official, policy official at NIH. That is why the NIH director would be making that determination to be able to marry up the intent of a program. There's a whole institute for disparity.
So a political appointee would be in the position, according to your proposed rule, of deciding whether this health grant studying why Black kids in this country are more likely to get sick and die from blood and brain cancer. They would be the one who decides whether this grant should be allowed, and not the scientists and the doctors and the people who know about
Senator,
preventing cancer.
we believe that it is important to have the executive agency's leadership, the cabinet secretaries, their undersecretaries, the people that are in charge who have come in with this administration to make the final decisions. And that doesn't mean they don't benefit from the use of from career recommendations, from peer review studies. All of that will be taken into account. But the days of us funding CRT because our agency heads didn't know it was going on, we're not doing that anymore.
Would you say that this particular grant that
That's a decision for the director of NIH
would conflict with the DEI rules that that your administration?
I think it would be a granular discussion that the director of NIH would have to make a decision on.
I think this is just an example of the absurdity and the bias of this proposed rule, and the danger of what happens when you bring political ideology into grant making processes, particularly around healthcare. I mean, researchers across the country, including in Minnesota, are making breakthroughs in medical advances, and it is not a place for political appointees to be putting their finger on the scale and saying, nope, this seems too woke for me, and therefore these kids aren't going to get the help that they want. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no more questions.
How atrocious and despicable is that you're going to cut cancer research regarding Black kids because of this racist, disgusting regime's policy? It's awful. Next, I want to show you as a Democratic senator right here, Raphael Warnock cross-examined him. Let's play this clip.
How many Americans were projected to have their medical debt wiped from their credit scores by the CFPB's medical debt rule, which you overturned?
I don't know, but the rule was unlawful.
The answer is 15 million. Medical debt can ruin credit scores, which can make it impossible for folks to ever buy a home. Do you know how many more mortgages consumers would have been able to afford each year if you hadn't overturned the rule?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
So the answer is 22,000. So 22,000 mortgages that consumers would have been able to afford, 15 million Americans who were set to have their medical debt wiped from their credit scores.
Next, I'll show you Democratic Senator Cortez Mastro's cross-examination. Let's play this clip.
Director Vought, let me ask you this. Do you believe that veterans who have served this country and put their lives on the line deserve support from the CFPB when they have been defrauded or there's some consumer protection issue?
Absolutely.
And in fact, you believe it so much so, I think you have it in your humility pledge that that's part of your statutory duty. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I'm going to submit for the record a letter that I have here. Actually, it's a story from Las Vegas where I have a military veteran who has a dispute with a mortgage lender. Unfortunately, he is not getting, any response and support from the CFPB.
Happy to take a look at it.
I want more than that. I want to know what you're actually doing for veterans. I want a reporting from the CFPB, your staff, what you're doing to help veterans. If you think it's limited to a statutory duty, I want to know that. I want a briefing from you and your office, specifically what you're doing, and that it's not being challenged in the courts right now. Would you agree to do that for me?
I'm leaving the post on August 1st.
I don't care who's leaving. You're there right now. Send somebody to my office. Are you willing to do that?
We're happy to take a look at the request and
So you will not give me a report?
Not in this moment, no.
No, not at this moment. At some point in time, come to my office.
We will give you whatever information with regard to our work on veterans that you're asking for.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. You know, it is not lost on me in your opening that you talk about how the CFPB has been weaponized and that it is not following the law and it is out of control. Because that is exactly what you're doing with the OMB. Since you've been there, As the director of OMB, you have defunded programs and whole agencies Congress authorized and appropriated funds. Even though you're in your statement, you recognize we are the appropriators. Thank you very much for recognizing that. You have delayed and denied funding for programs Congress supported with law and money. You have supported the firing commissioners and staff of multiple federal agencies. You think this should be a bipartisan commission, but you support eliminating all the Democrats that are on commissions on all these federal agencies. Experienced and qualified people who had responsibility to solve problems for the American people and enhance our standing in the world. Not only are prices higher because of the work that you have done in this administration with the president, the world is more dangerous. Let me ask you this. You've been asked about the Housing Trust Fund. We have just passed a bipartisan, bicameral housing trust fund, housing fund to address the housing needs in this country. Your boss didn't support it. Are you committed to sending the funds there when we appropriate those funds based on the bipartisan, bicameral law that we have passed when it comes to housing and the Road to 21st Century Housing Bill?
Senator, we have every intention of apportioning all funds that have been appropriated.
Without any politics, without any type of DEI or wokeism invoked into that?
We're going to make sure that it's spent based on the priorities of this administration. But we're going to do everything we can to get the money out the door.
Well, let me just say this to you, because based on your priorities, and I say this truly, you're putting us in more danger. Let me put a point on this. HIDTA, which is the high intensity drug trafficking areas that I have worked with as a former attorney general, there are programs across the country. They're bipartisan support for them. They disrupt drug trafficking organizations. They combat the ongoing fentanyl crisis that your boss talks about all the time. They protect our communities from drug addiction, overdoses, and crime. Your office decided it was time to delay funding to HIDTA. You know what happened because of your delay? The delay was so severe that HIDTA programs had to furlough staff and scale back enforcement activities. That's what you're causing here. And you have no authority to do so. And you always talk about court cases. The only reason we're in court is because the court is challenging the decisions you have made and overruling them. And all my ask is, stop playing the games. Stop playing the games. Stop picking winners and losers. If we send something to you in a bipartisan way, we hope you respect it. We hope you respect it. I am frustrated because I have seen time and time again your political you sit right here and you talk about wokeism and the last administration, and you always invoke the last administration. And the only reason you are is because you know why? Who the administration was prior to that? Was the Trump administration. They didn't go through this whole-scale illegally violating the appropriations process. But now all of a sudden, that's happening under your watch. You got to question what is going on here. So I appreciate it. My time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now I will show you the cross-examination by Senator Warren of Russ Vought. Here, play this clip.
Acting Director Vought, how many of the enforcement actions and investigations that you dropped were against companies that have donated to President Trump?
We've made every determination with regard to supervision and enforcement without regard to anything other than the statute and the charge that we've been given at the agency.
How many have donated to President Trump? You've dropped 40 plus actions for companies. How many of those companies have donated to President Trump?
I have no idea because
you
I
have
never
no
looked at
idea.
such things.
Actually, some of them were telling you. Toyota, for example, said, we've reached out to the White House, and it's a matter of public record, where they donated $1 million. You know, so I've got a list here of companies that cut checks to President Trump that we know of. Apple, Bank of America, Capital One, JP Morgan. You want me to keep going on this? Toyota, Walmart, Meta, and that's just at the CFPB. In 2025, across federal agencies, the Trump administration dropped cases against more than 50 companies that we can document have financial ties to the president or to his inner circle.
Here's what Ruben Gallego, senator from Arizona, had to say during his cross-examination. Let's play it.
Now let's look at how you actually choose to enforce the law. So Navy Federal Credit Union was caught charging its members millions in illegal surprise overdraft fees. These members are active duty, veterans, DOD employees, and their families. I was once a young Marine. Every dollar really does matter when you're a young Marine. And the last CFPB ordered Navy Federal to pay a $15 million penalty and refund more than $80 million back to those service members' pockets. I think that's a very just outcome. But you tore up that consent order. Am I correct?
It was based on a decision of which the previous administration had put out guidance that was not lawful.
Okay.
So when the company was then penalized for it, there was no grounds for that consent order.
Did any of that $80 million go back to any of those veterans when you tore that up?
They paid their $15 million in the penalty.
They paid their $15 million, but the people that actually were ripped off by Navy Federal Credit Union did not get anything.
They weren't
The
actually
previous
ripped
order
off,
would have
Senator.
the previous order would have given those $80 million back to the people that were ripped off.
And that would have been paid by service members under the Navy Federal Credit Union.
But right now, for a fact, we know that they're not getting the $80 million back.
The underlying issue is overdraft
your
fees.
decision basically means that these men and women who are ripped off are not getting $80 million back because the previous order actually
illegal.
would have done that.
It was illegal.
It's not illegal. It was just, and you just basically tore up, and you didn't replace it by anything. So like these men and women are now left $80 million.
Because there's no authority to deal with overdraft fees, which, by the way, makes sure that we have overdraft fee protection.
There was an order specifically designed to bring restitution to these veterans that were credibly ripped off, and you could have found another way to do it, but instead you just let them continue to be ripped off. And that is your decision.
Then we heard from Virginia Senator Warner. Here's what he had to say.
Well, the real question I want to get to. You said in your writings that you wanted to traumatize federal workforce. So, Director Vought, as a former CEO myself.
That's not what I said, Senator, but I'm happy to clarify previous statements.
Listen, your writings were very clear. You wanted to make sure federal workers felt like they shouldn't go to work. You felt like you wanted to add trauma. So I'm asking you, as business guy to government employee, give yourself a grade on how much trauma you've brought to federal workforce.
We've done aggressive actions to live and have fiscally responsible
So
government.
give me a, and please don't.
I don't accept the premise of the question, Senator.
Well, no, I am. You know, the thing is, you want to ask the questions, get elected, and sit up here. You got a United States Senator asking you a question. Give yourself a grade, A, B, C, D, F, on how well you've done at traumatizing our workforce.
I think we've done an incredible job in running the CFPB, and I'm excited to be here to answer questions about that.
I was a business guy, so don't, use bureaucratic mumbo jumbo. Did you get an A, a B, a C, or did you fail? I actually think you did with your goal of traumatizing and undermining the federal workforce. I think you did a pretty damn good job. What grade would you give?
We've done an excellent job at running the CFPB.
Sir, I would say excellent job on terrorizing and traumatizing our federal workforce. And again, I go back and thank the chairman and so many.
And then finally, we heard from Democratic Senator Elsa Brooks from Maryland. Here's what she had to say. Let's play it.
Director Vought, I have been waiting to have the opportunity to come back face to face with you to ask for an explanation for what I regard as absolutely depraved, I use that word again, and draconian actions to decimate our public institutions, politicize federal grant programs, to stall funding for NIH and for CDC public health programs, harming our research institutions, dismantling the CFPB. And I have to tell you, I couldn't wait to get here on behalf of the 160,000 federal employees in my state. The actions taken toward our federal employees has been evil. Absolutely evil. And it is the most galling aspect of what I regard as shameful tenure at the OMB as director has been your outright animosity and blatant hostility toward our federal workers. And I haven't made this up. In fact, I'm going to read your own words that you famously said without remorse. You said, we want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected. When they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work because they are increasingly regarded as the villain. This is so evil. And the 150,000 federal workers who are in my state who come together, these are the patriots of our country who've worked, many of them, for decades. They didn't care whether the president was a Democrat or Republican. They are here to serve the American people, and they will not forget how they were treated and what was said, and neither will I. And in fact, one Marylander who lost his federal job said the following: I can't tell you how terrifying it is to be a parent of 2 children faced with the thought that you cannot provide for your family. And so I ask you, is that the kind of trauma that you were talking about? Did you intend to sow terror for parents who need to provide for their families? Is that the kind of trauma that you were anticipating?
Senator, I've explained those comments on numerous occasions. I was referring to bureaucracies and not the career civil servants that do the job. Many of those bureaucracies are weaponized against the American people. We've taken steps to deal with that, but as it pertains to civil servants, I have a very high regard for them and the work that they do.
Well, I think the words speak for themselves. I really do. I don't think anybody can say that combination of words and have it be explicable. It is inexplicable. And
there you have it, folks. Let me know what you think. Want to remind you all as well, WTF, right? After watching that, don't you just go, WTF. That's the book that I wrote with my brothers. WTF, America, The Way Out of This Hell and Back to Democracy. It's out October. Pre-order it right now, though. I've been pouring my heart into this, and it's been inspired by you, the Meidas Mighty. It's called WTF America. Pre-order it right now. You could scan the QR code to get that. Pre-order right now. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Breaking news right now, my brothers and I wrote a book. It's called WTF America. And well, doesn't that just say it all? It comes out officially this October, but you can pre-order your copy today. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description below.